A CNN panel is calling out Democrats for endangering our democracy by elevating insane right-wing candidates. This is the Pied Piper strategy, which famously failed in 2016. In recent primaries in multiple states, media reports Democrats have been paying for ads supporting extremist Republican candidates in the hopes that they would win their primaries and they would be easy to beat in general elections. That is the assumption. In Maryland, for example, the Democratic Governors Association financially backed ads promoting Dan Cox, a Trump-backed gubernatorial candidate. Cox, of course, is anti-choice, pro-oil and gas, thinks critical race theory is indoctrinating children, thinks trans people in sports is somehow a major issue, even though it's really not. A lot of the states, by the way, that have tried to ban or have actually banned transgender athletes have had 0 cases of transgender athletes that are competing in sports. And so it's just nakedly anti-trans and incredibly bigoted. Cox also thinks that the solution to crime is getting rid of immigrants. So look, this is the guy who won the Republican primary, partly thanks to Democrats who, again, paid to help him in ads, which led to CNN's Manu Raju asking this question. Take a look.
I mean, Larry Hogan, the Maryland governor, the Republican, said the Democrats are playing with fire. I mean, are they?
I mean, well, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that it's a clear strategy, right? Because not only did we see it in Maryland, but we've seen it play out across gubernatorial races in several other states. Josh Shapiro running ads for Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania comes to mind, for example. And look, they are trying to get the more extreme candidate to face the Democrat in the general election. They believe that it gives them a better chance. But of course, it raises the questions that Governor Hogan raised about them playing with fire and the dangers of this. If Democrats are going to say throughout these January 6th hearings that democracy is under attack, how can you then also go ahead and prop some of these candidates up?
It's a huge risk.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Yes, it's a huge risk. It's an absolute huge risk. You know why? Because guess what? We've already had an example of it blowing up in Democrats' faces. And by the way, not just Democrats' faces, in everyone else's face. Remember, the 2016, the Clinton campaign elevated Donald Trump because they thought that Donald Trump would be easy to beat. And guess what? We all paid the price with 4 years of Donald Trump. And now scores of even more extremist Republicans that don't give a damn about a democracy, voted to end our democracy, are currently in power as a result. We've lost the Supreme Court. We've lost abortion rights in many states. Money in politics is even worse now, thanks to the extremist Supreme Court, which is also incredibly corporatist. The environment is a disaster, all because, guess what? The Democrats were more scared of a populist progressive candidate winning a primary and possibly winning the election, because guess what? It would actually affect their donors. That said, let's go to the next video here. Raju then asked the panel whether or not it's going to be effective, and this is the conversation that ensued.
A lot of those frontlines members also say privately, well, I would much rather run against a super MAGA Trump acolyte because it just makes it easier.
And we also know that that's going to be one of Democrats' central midterm messages. I've been talking to folks at the White House where, President Biden is preparing to make his entry into kind of midterm campaign mode. One of their key arguments is that the Republican Party is extreme, and it is more extreme than whatever you may think about the Democrats' leftward pull. And so having these kind of candidates certainly helps to play into that argument.
That is my question for Democrats. It's like, okay, you've got this political message about our democracy and about what's important. Propping up these kinds of candidates like a Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania or a Kari Lake potentially in Arizona, that is contrary to everything else that you are telling the American people about where you stand and what you believe and what's important. And if we end up if it ends up that some of these extreme candidates that they've propped up get elected and actually do make moves in 2024 that jeopardize our presidential election process, like, they're going to have to answer for that.
Yeah, it's not just contrary. It undercuts the whole argument.
It does.
Yeah. I mean, when Democrats tell you that the greatest threat to democracy is Donald Trump-like candidates and that the very fate of our republic rests on defeating them, and at the same time they're bolstering them for partisan advantage in a tight race, The first argument, both arguments can't be true.
Right.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just the little thing that I just keep hearing on these arguments.
Right. I mean, look, very
I mean,
clear.
they wished to run against Donald Trump.
Right, they do. And see what
In
happens.
2016,
And
look what
they,
got
and they
them.
lost. And they can win again. It's certainly possible.
While what they're saying was absolutely true, I think they're missing some key context. The reason that Democrats are backing insane people on the right, Republican side, is because if they do, they're not going to actually have to do anything while in power to help you. I mean, look, either insane Republicans win and Democrats that are still in power say, oh, well, you know, we'd like to do something. We would love to help by raising the minimum wage, but we can't. We just don't have the numbers. We don't have the votes. We just can't do anything. Now, if they still beat insane Republicans, get a majority, well, guess what? They'll still say, well, we can't actually do anything to raise the minimum wage because, you know, that could hurt our election chances in the next election. And then the media and establishment Democrats can blame Biden for going too far to the left when he hasn't done a damn thing for the left. Has he done Medicare for all? No. Has he canceled student loan debt? No. Has he expanded voting rights? No. Has he protected abortion rights using federal powers? No. The things that he would be able to do with executive orders and presidential power, he has refused to do. And then talks about bipartisanship, right? Oh, we need the bipartisanship. Well, of course, bipartisanship when it comes to Democrats is them going in to join the Republicans. And besides, are you going to have bipartisanship with the Republicans right now when the vast majority of them literally voted against birth control for no reason at all, against contraception coverage? No, they're not going to come over. They're not going to come over at all. No, Republicans, look, and worse, by the way, is now you have Democratic groups that are funding Republican insane challengers who, again, in many cases have won their primaries and in some cases have defeated Democrats and now are in Congress. They're in power. And they did that, by the way, instead of helping progressive candidates, which desperately need it. And that is very striking. They would rather help extremist Republicans and risk them getting into power, taking over, than boost a progressive candidate. And it really shows you their priorities. They hate progressives more than they hate insane fascist Republicans. Think about that for a second. They would rather play Russian roulette with our democracy than have a progressive candidate win. Because, you know, again, it's because they'd actually have to do things like maybe they'd have to try and get a vote for health care. Maybe they would actually try to lower prescription drug prices or raise wages for working people or make colleges and universities tuition free. All the things that would have a negative impact on their corporate donors. That's the reality. And yes, CNN, they're so close in having this conversation. Because again, they're talking about, oh, you know, it's a really good idea to fund insane Republican candidates because they think that they might have an advantage. They're not going to have an advantage because guess what? The right wing is captured by insanity. The voters are captured by insanity. And then you have this media ecosphere on the right. It's the griftosphere. And then you have, you know, cable news, which in a lot of cases had actually painted both sides as even though they're not, that have created this situation. Right-wing media is an echo chamber of dog shit. It's a disaster. Absolute disaster, media is. And look, the thing that they missed, the most important bit, even though I think that generally they touched on a lot of good points, they missed the money. The money is the most important thing. The answer is really right in front of them, right in front of their faces, and they miss it. The reason the media never talks about the money is because of where the money goes. That money goes right back to mainstream media. Campaign donations in the form of buying ads, advertisements, political ads. And it just brings me back to the very important quote here to explain all of this from Upton Sinclair, who said that it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And that right there is the biggest indictment against mainstream cable media.